All right. So, twofold question. From 27 to 30 is when all this paradigm shift started. How long after you got serious about your debt did it take you to get out of debt? And then move from there into the conversation, because a lot of people are at that place where you were. Maybe they didn't do the calculations, but they're at a place in their mind like there's got to be more, and they want to delve into entrepreneurship, have no clue on what type. So, talk to us about how long it took you to get out of debt, and also the journey that you went on to figure out how you were going to dab your toe into this whole business entrepreneurship space.
So I'll put it this way. You have a great quote, there's got to be more, and there is more. And that's kind of what I focus on now. I would think for me, what it looked like is I was fortunate. I was always freelance writing, and also had a different podcast at this time where we help millennials make money, save money, and get out of debt. And we were doing all these interviews. And I remember I had one specific interview where a guest came on and she talked about if you read 10 pages a day, you can read a book a month, because she did, basic math, which it's amazing how basic math can still blow your mind. She's like, the average book's 300 pages. You can read a book a month. I was like, that doesn't make any sense. And so I did this challenge for the show, ended up reading 4 books in 2 months. And then I ended up reading 28, I think I'm at now, personal finance books. And I give those away for free because I review them for the guests. And what I realized is we were having millionaires on the show. I think we had y'all on the show. And I realized I wasn't implementing anything from the show. I was listening, but I wasn't hearing. And I was like, let me have this crazy idea. Like, what if I started up my own business? I actually wrote a piece about it. I remember it was the next FinCon, and I wrote this reflective piece. This was like FinCon 2019 or maybe 18. And I said, every year I go to FinCon, every year I see people leveling up and talking about their growth and development in the last 12 months. And I'm like, oh, we recorded 52 podcasts. And I'm like, I think I can do more than that. And so I launched my brand officially in 2020. And I mean, another little pivot that happened there, number one is age, but number two was we were about to record the podcast. We used to record on Sundays, release on Monday. We were about to record the podcast one Sunday, and we got the breaking news, like everyone else across the world, that there had been a helicopter crash in LA. Then we found out right before the show that it was Kobe Bryant. We're like, okay, let's take a break. Let's take a breather. And we were about to get started again. And we found out that it was his daughter and eight other individuals that passed. It's like, we're not recording today. That Chadwick Boseman, and I think anyone, you can insert your celebrity or your individual, like you remember where you were. And like, I was, I think 37 at that time. I was like, I started thinking about my legacy differently than I ever had in my life. And I think all these events leading up to that age, which coincidentally allowed me to become an entrepreneur. So to answer what I think is a question that you have in there is, how do you get started running a business? Start running a business. Everything I've learned, it helped the books. And you ask, okay, you got a degree in business. Did that help? No, like nothing has helped me more than this now about 18-month experience I've had running my own business. All the lessons in books and reading 20 personal finance books were good. But like I said, I was listening, but I wasn't hearing.
You bring up a good point. I'm sitting here as you're talking, thinking and reflecting like, dang, dude, have I used my business degree in this business at all? And I have not. I got 2 master's degrees that are in education, because I was in education. I was a teacher and a school administrator, but my undergrad is in business administration. And yeah, I use absolutely none of that in this. I literally didn't think about it. You just said it. Yeah, I'm using pretty much none of it. Now, there were some terminologies that you mentioned that are second nature to you, but for some people, they're like, wait, back up. You mentioned that you had started freelance writing, and you mentioned you started a podcast. So how did you find out that, hey, I can make some money by writing? How did you get your toe into that game? Because some people are like, hey, I can write a little bit. What is this freelance writing thing? And how do you make money by writing? So can you give a little, freelance writing one-on-one for people who that caught their attention?
I'm gonna back into it because I think there's a bigger umbrella, and it's one that I accidentally learned recently. So my brother-in-law says I Forrest Gump my way through life. To answer your question real quickly, everything I do, I stumbled into. I started freelance writing because I started blogging, and I started blogging because I was on MySpace, and most people don't even realize this, but there used to be a blog section in MySpace. And I was just writing funny stories about things happening in my life, and people were commenting. They're like, "Hey, you need a blog." I'm like, "Oh, what?" I didn't know what the hell a blog was. And so then I started a blog under a pseudonym because I thought I was so important that no one needed to know my story. So I started hiding. Of course, when I came out, no one cared. And that being said, so I go by the government name now. And I got about, I was getting like 10,000 views. I didn't realize how good I was doing. I was like, people were like, "Oh, what's your view count?" I'm like, "I'm getting like 10,000 views a month." They're like, "What?" I don't get that. Like, I work for, Huffington Post. We're not seeing those numbers. Bad example because I get millions. And I was like, "Oh, okay. If you say that's good, that's good." And a team of writers like Voltron reached out to me, and they're like, "Hey, we're 7 writers." Because it is pretty exhausting to maintain websites. I'm sure you know if you maintain a blog. And they were like, "Hey, we're going to each write a blog a month, and then that a blog a day." And so that way you could take off some of the load, we'll share the profits. And with that one, ended up doing 100,000 views a month. I talked to the owner of it later. And so to answer your question, like, you do it by doing it. You learn by doing it. I got into freelance writing by starting to write. Dynamics changed a little bit as far as access. So you got to access it differently. But I also think, really, in everything I talk about, um, there's so many more options now. So it's more difficult and more higher competition, but there's more entryways. Like you said, that the gateways have been torn down. The way I was going to back into it, I reached out recently, and it's another contract gig I speak picked up now. I have like 26 affiliates and 7 revenue streams, might be 9 now. I track an Excel spreadsheet, and I reached out to a woman that I've been working with for years, and in the same space, because I wanted to pick up some continuing professional education training, which is something that auditors and things need. And I was like, "Hey, can I work with you?" And I knew she was well in space and super big. And I was like, "And also, can I ask you a personal question?" And she's like, "Yeah." I was like, "I see how big you've gotten. I see the growth that you have. I think I remember when you started, because I try to also, like, people think they know you when they saw you in your journey, but they don't realize you ran 100 miles, and they see the 99th mile. They're like, 'Man, you make it look so easy.' It's like, do you know how many miles I've been running for you to think this was easy in the final mile?" And she goes, I'm actually hesitant to say this to you. And I was like, "What's that?" Now she's like, I call it walk by faith. I feel that, God put me where I needed to be successful when I needed to be successful. And I have no idea how it happened. She's like, I was prepared for it when it came. I had a system in place. And I thought that was funny that she was embarrassed to say that to me, but I thought that was amazing because I thought she had it all together and all figured out. And that's another thing I learned through these interviews. A lot of people don't have it figured out going in. A lot of people on the top don't have it figured out at the top. I'm like, "How did you do it?" They're like, "I have no idea how I got here. I don't know how I'm still here." But I think it's that hunger, that walk by faith. My therapist calls it a faith walk. And I'll end with her story that she shared with me. She said she started her practice. She had a full-time job. She started her practice pre-pandemic, and then the pandemic hit. She's like, "Oh my, what was I thinking?" Like, no, I started a in-person activity during the middle of the pandemic. And she said she did more business during the pandemic than she had done in the prior 2 years, because people are now reflective on life and they want to talk to somebody and they need help. They're stuck in the house. And she's like, "But I had the system in place. So when all these thousands of people came, or views, or whatever her numbers are, my practice was able to be successful because I was ready to succeed." So everything that I'm talking about here is happenstance, and it's a glorious Forrest Gump run that I'm on. But I've always been really good, and this is what I coach people in now, about when your Forrest Gump run starts, you better have a system in place for all that run and for all that success.